Hello again, everyone. This is David Stearns from Haley Marketing Group, and welcome to today's Lunch with Haley webinar. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce Scott Wintrip, our guest speaker, and I think almost everybody on today's call knows Scott, and if you don't, you're in for a treat. If you do, you know you're in for some expert advice. Scott has been consulting for the staffing industry for more years than I'm sure he'd care to share, but I do know that when it came to drawing an audience for today's webinar, all we had to do was mention that Scott was speaking and a huge crowd showed up. So Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you and transfer control so you can run this from your computer, and we look forward to learning more about the avoidant economy and what we need to do to thrive in these crazy times.
Crazy is right. So thank you, David. I appreciate it. And I just ask that you all bear with me for a moment here. I'm going to get our PowerPoint started. That's not going to work, huh, David? We don't want to have our technical difficulties here. Oh. Wow, it wants to show my presenter tools, and you all don't want to see that, so bear with me a second. Well, that's not helpful, huh?
That's what happens when you use a Mac.
11. Yeah, for those who don't use Macs, there's a little saying, once you go Mac, you never go back. So, sorry, folks. We thought we had the technical difficulties worked out here, and apparently not. So bear with me one second. We have the technology to fix this. David, are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, the sound is great, and there we go with the presentation.
There we go. Fantastic. All right. See, if that's the worst thing that happens in the next hour, we're all doing well. Well, welcome to all of you. Welcome to the Avoidant Economy, and welcome to a celebration. Yesterday was David Stearns' birthday. He refused to tell me which one, which tells me something. And today is my father's 70th birthday, so all these good people with birthdays. And so we'll celebrate together. One of the things I want to celebrate with all of you is this opportunity called the Avoidant Economy. And the name Avoidant Economy is something I came up with to really represent what's going on out there. There's an avoidance. We're going to talk about that. In fact, let me walk you through our agenda very quickly here. I'm going to define what the avoidant economy is for you. I will tell you this up front. The avoidant economy is actually the greatest opportunity our industry has seen in the past 3 decades. It's such a great opportunity, it will have all of us, if we play our cards right, saying, thank God for the Great Recession. Now that one may feel like a stretch right now, but bear with me, because when you see what's going on, when you hear about the opportunities it presents, and then you hear these 10 ideas, and kind of buckle in here, because I'm going to cover a lot of ground very quickly, because we've got an hour together today, but I wanted to fully equip you with 10 of dozens of ideas about how to leverage this economy. Where this came from, so you know, is I just published a video book. I'll tell you how to access that. The first chapter that I reference a little bit of information from today is absolutely free, so you'll learn how to access that. Plus, I'm going to give a discount for anybody who wants to view it. All of the content shared here today is actually not shared in the book, with one small exception. So if you like the ideas today, there's more for you other places. But if you don't want to go any further than we go today, you're going to have what you need to be equipped to better leverage the avoidant economy, and that's what those 10 ideas are about. We'll do some Q&A at the end. David is the master of Q&A, the facilitator, the host with the most, so he's going to be managing that. And he's made me a promise that he's going to be collecting those questions. You can pose them at any time. He's going to jump in if appropriate, and if I'm going to answer it later, I'll let him know that. But any we don't get to the best of our ability, we will get to at the end. And if there's any spillover, I promise I will answer those by email as well. All right, so let's dive in. What is this avoidant economy? Well, I think the picture kind of says it all. The avoidant economy is about avoidance. And what they're avoiding, they being the buyers, is overhead. The overhead is a scary thing. When you go through a great recession like we did, when you suffer because of having high overhead, when you have to lay hordes of people off, it changes your psyche. So now we have delayed decisions because they don't want to have overhead, fear of expenditures. The hoarding of cash is interesting. I call it the new business throne. Companies are literally sitting on piles of cash. The Fortune 500 alone are sitting on billions and billions of dollars in cash because cash is security these days in these volatile times. And all of this has created a permanent change in psyche, and I say permanent because we're never going to go back to the way things were. Just like after the Great Depression, people's psyche changed, those that lived through that. The psyche changed permanently. So the avoidant economy is not going away. In fact, it's getting broader, and it's even getting deeper as volatility, uncertainty, and fear continue to prompt leaders to pause. Pause before making decisions, pause before making choices, and pause certainly before taking on overhead. And it's getting worse, not better. The upcoming fiscal cliff has companies doing interesting things. They're actually releasing earnings on stocks early, before first quarter, because of potential tax implications. Companies in some cases have brought hiring to a complete halt or screeching halt or pause. And then you put on top of all this Obamacare and what's going to happen with that and all the uncertainty there. Leaders are scared. Companies are scared. Now, you might think this is bad for us. It is the exact opposite. This is why we have grown this year as an industry. This is why we continue to do well. We are the solution to the problem. And the problem is they don't want overhead, but they have to get work done. And so because of this, we are seeing unprecedented levels of hiring. People who are leveraging the avoidant economy are saying, I have more orders than I had even before the Great Recession. Those who are really leveraging this are saying, I'm able to convert people to payrolling or their staff to our team or getting them to hire everybody through us unlike any time before. People who are doing direct hire are saying, you know, the rest of the industry says they're slow. I'm booming because of the avoidant economy because people want guarantees. They want to make sure that those hires work out. If they hire on their own, they don't have guarantees, but when they do it through me, they have guarantees. I'll replace those people. So today we're going to talk, now that you know what the avoidant economy is, how do you make the most of this? And probably one of my more controversial ideas, and for those of you know me, and you know I have a wicked sense of humor, I could not resist on calling the first chapter of the book, and this is the chapter that's free, and it's a video, Stop Lifting Your Kimono. And I decided to be a little risque about this to get people's attention, because there is a practice in this industry that drives me crazy. We still do it, and we have to stop it. Now, I picked kimono because if you look at this sketch, this beautiful sketch on your screen, you know, the kimono, this traditional Asian garment, it covers from neck to toe, and it covers everything up. And part of the, you know, the wonder and beauty of this is it is covering up the body. There's nothing exposed. I'm pretty sure that most people in public wearing a kimono would not lift it, open it, shift it, do anything that would be inappropriate. Yet we do the equivalent of this. We lift our kimonos, so to speak, to our customers. And the way we do that is as follows. We offer markups instead of bill rates. And for those of you that don't do this, by the way, kudos to you, absolute kudos. Markups and other proprietary information are nobody's business. That's why when you go into Target and Macy's and grocery stores, when you talk to attorneys, when you talk to other service providers, they don't tell you what their markup is. They don't lead with this. And if people ask the question, they don't divulge it. In the video book, I challenge people to walk into a store, grab a product, demand to see the manager, and then say, I'm not leaving until you tell me how much your markup is, and watch how they quickly show you the door. It is an archaic practice that we have allowed to happen, that we continue to allow to happen. Here's the statistic that really is key, and it's this one about firms that offer a bill rate and those that are doing it in the avoidant economy. The key is to shift the focus. You want to shift the focus to your value and not about your price, because the moment you get on price, it's all about commoditization. So here's the statistic. The firms that I've helped move to a bill rate only versus a markup that they communicate to their customers are generating at least 3% more in additional gross margin. So just this one thing alone. Now, how do you get there? Well, I encourage you, go listen to this free chapter, watch this free chapter. I'll tell you how to get there, because there are several ideas how to do that with existing customers and new customers. But here's one simple one right now, and this is so simple you can start doing it today. Starting today, offer a bill rate to all new customers. And if asked, just indicate you don't have a markup. Now, I've had some people go, but Scott, that's lying because we calculate things by markup. Well, you know what? You don't have a markup that's public knowledge. That's what I'm saying to you. You don't share that. So you just tell people, we don't work by markup, which means you don't work by markup and communicating it to your customers. It's proprietary. Now, I'm not going to ask David to jump back on, but I bet he's nodding right now. I bet David doesn't tell people what his markup is. I bet other service providers out there who serve the staffing industry, and this includes me, we don't tell people what our markup is. We don't need to do that. It's proprietary information. It doesn't matter at the end of the day as long as you're getting value for the bill rate or the rate that you're paying. So just make that decision. Start operating on a bill rate to all of your new customers. And I'll offer some additional language. Tell them you do this for simplicity's sake. Explain to new customers that you're different and better as a result. There's the key. You're different and better because you have a simplified billing format. There's no calculation involved. There's no crazy markups and things like that. We just have a simple bill rate. Now, if you're concerned, well, they won't work with me, you know what? It's not that they won't work with you because you don't have a markup. They won't work with you if they don't think the value is worth it. I can guarantee you this, and this is why these firms who are working off of a bill rate are doing better on their gross margin. They make sure they pack enough value that it's worth the price they charge. And one of the good ways to frame this is when you offer your bill rate, you say it will be no more than, you just give that top end number. And as the salesperson or leader, you say, and we'll do our best to be under that, to be less than that. Now, I've mentioned value a couple times here today. And what I'm going to make sure that I do is I'm going to give you, as part of our 10 techniques, ways to instill value that will allow you to offer a bill rate, which will allow you to grow your gross margins. One of those actually is in our next technique. For those of you who have kids, I've got two. I've got my son Benjamin, who's 15, and Mackenzie, who's from my new wife, is 19. And I know this is true of Mackenzie. Holly's told me this, but it's true with Benjamin as well. You know, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And my answer was always the same, 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes. My answer, it could have been 5 hours. I always said 5 more minutes. Well, there's a yet. Are we there yet in our business? There's a yet that you can create in the avoidant economy that actually make you stand out and allow you to sell people who on the surface don't have a need. I'll tell you a quick story about this. I do this at Staffing World every year I go there. I do this at every conference I go to. And if any of you run into me on the way to the convention center, I'll be doing the yet with you. Just know that up front. And part of it is just I'm very, very curious. And I do this because it creates opportunity. I was on my way from my hotel room through the Venetian Casino this year on the way to the convention center. And I met a CFO on the way there. And we were talking. And I asked him a question. I said, you know, and I won't tell his name for confidentiality, but I said, you know, Mr. CEO, after we met, I've been hearing a lot from leaders about their concerns about Obamacare and how this is going to change their organization. And I'm curious what your thoughts are about that and what your firm's doing about it. Well, this guy just went off. Very topical. You know, I knew as a CFO, they're always sensitive to cost. This guy went off. And he said something key, and I was listening for that key thing that I could then work off of. He said, we know we can't control this, so we know we have to make more money. And so we're finding ways to do that. And so I said to him, I said, you know, it's interesting you mentioned that because another company had said that to me because they had earlier in the year, and I told him a success story. I told him that we were able to boost gross margins more than 5% this year alone because of some value selling strategies that we did. And I didn't have to do any selling. I just told him straight. He goes, really, that's interesting. I said, well, yeah, if you think that's interesting, why don't we do this? Why don't we set up a call with you and the leadership team and we can talk about that further? He couldn't get his iPhone out of his pocket fast enough to schedule that appointment. That's creating the yet. You know, you don't have to wait for the opportunities to come to you. You can make them come to you and the other person. And yet, by the way, is an acronym. If you didn't know it, it stands for You're Eligible To. You're eligible to create opportunities. You're eligible to invite them to be a part of something that's collaborative and consultative. And here's how you do it. These are the 4 steps that I just described to you in my story. You just stay very topical. You stay very current. Easy to do. Every morning when I'm at the gym, I watch Morning Joe on MSNBC. I find it to be a balanced argument of both sides, but they keep me very, very current. I read the business section of the Wall Street Journal every day. I don't read every little detail. I pick up the essence and the core points, and I do the same thing with the New York Times. I find this gives me all the topical stuff to then have a provocative conversation regardless of who I'm talking to. I recently found myself in a conversation with somebody from 3PL, third-party logistics. And I had just read something about regulation on transportation. And so I asked, his thoughts about this, and of course he went off, because people like to talk about what's of interest to them and things that are relevant to their business or of interest. You do step 3 then. You integrate their responses into additional questions. So you just flip those into additional questions. You funnel down to the opportunity to provide value. And you just listen for that opportunity, like in my story. Then I say here you use an if-then close. And this is one variation of the close, where you close people on the appointment. You say something like, look, if I can set up a call so we can talk about this, then would that be of interest to you and your team, and we can talk about this further. I can share some of my thoughts. I find it's rare that they say no to this one. And why would they? Because this isn't a sales conversation. This starts with interest and intrigue, and it really just follows a consultative path where it makes incredible sense. This is the reality in the avoidant economy. Yes, there will be low-hanging fruit. Yes, there will be opportunities to come to you. But here's the reality. The customers, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know the things you could do for them. They don't know how you saved companies time, money, effort. They don't know how the current topics are things that you could also help them with unless you create that yet. So if you do that in the avoidant economy, not only will you have more business, you'll have better business. You don't have the stuff that's being put out to bid. You're actually creating opportunities. Now, as you create opportunities, you have to prepare for the great talent recession. This happens to be another title in the video book. This one's not free, so I wanted to come and bring to you one of the most important parts. And it's this very interesting graph. The great talent recession, while it may not be like our great recession that we just went through, it is a very real thing. Now this graph comes from, it was part of the study that was released. This was a Georgetown University Center on Education study from June 2011. And this was, the study is called The Undereducated American. And just look at this chart. This is amazing. So you have this dark line. This is demand for talent as of 2010. And this is the supply of talent. And look, as we go back to 1990, just pre-1990, all of a sudden these two diverge, and they're getting wider and wider over time. Well, why is that? Our graduation rates for professionals, for example, has not been good for a long time. IT graduates, for example, less than 100,000 a year, yet it's projected by about next year we're going to be close to a million unfilled IT jobs. This is true in every other profession. This is true in even blue-collar and skilled trades. And what's exacerbating this is the fact that baby boomers are retiring. Some of them are doing a little bit later, and they're going ahead and doing it even though they may have less in their stock portfolio. Visas are not solving this. Graduation rates may be improving in some cases, but we're not putting out enough talent. The key with the great talent recession is even if you're creating the yet, even if you're doing well on not lifting your kimono and having bill rate versus markup, you got to have the product on the shelf. And as we all know, that product is our talent. So I'm going to give you, and these are 3 things that are not in the book, but I'm going to give you 3 ideas in particular that I'm using with my clients. And what they're finding is their fill rates are faster, their fills are better, and they're winning customers and winning exclusives without even trying because they're getting it done better than anybody else because they have the talent on hand. So 3 things you need to do. Because your customers aren't going to be able to find people, so doggone it, you better be able to do it, and you better be able to do it faster than your competition. So number 1 thing you need to do is be focused versus full service. Now, I'm known for controversial things at times because I tell the truth even though people don't like it. And here's a reality, and for those of you who claim to be full-service firms, good for you, but you're probably not. And the reality is you may claim you're full service, but if you look at the bulk of your business, probably at least 40 to 50% or more of your business falls into 2 or 3 job types. All companies, I don't care who you are, you're especially good at certain things. And while I'm not telling you to abandon being full service, in fact, in smaller markets, you have to cover a wider swath of titles, a wider swath of jobs, and I understand that. However, you have to be especially good at certain things because you can't always be reactive. You can't always be taking the order and then going to find the people, taking the order and then going and finding the people. You can't do it. Instead, you have to do number 2, the second bullet, active versus reactive recruiting. If you're a little more focused, and yes, you can still be full service, but within that, you're especially good at certain things, you can do some active recruiting. Look, if you're doing temp and contract, they work for you anyway. You should be recruiting them ahead of time. No, this doesn't mean benching them. No, it doesn't mean paying them money. It's lining the people up so they're ready to go because you're going to have something around the corner because you know what your top things are. You have to be active. Companies that are active in their recruiting effort on the things they're especially good at, their time to fill is typically half that of other staffing firms. They're closing deals faster. They're beating the competition. Their margins are higher as a result because people are willing to pay more for that. That really is leveraging the avoidant economy because here's the other thing about the avoidant economy. Because they're avoiding overhead, they're waiting to the last minute unlike any time before. I mean, they've always waited to the last minute, these customers. It's even worse. You have to line up the talent faster. Last thing then, for the great talent recession, this talent is already so hard to come by, retain them better. You should be shooting for 80 to 90% retention of all of your temps and your contractors, whichever ones you have for the type of staffing you do. 80 to 90% retention is the new standard if you truly want to prosper, especially in the great talent recession. The recruiting cost is too high not to do this. The cost to you in regards to labor intensity is too high not to do this. And if you're more focused versus full service, this is especially easier to do. And what happens then is you're able, each recruiter or staffing coordinator on your team is actually able to handle a bigger book of business because the labor intensity is reduced. Now, as we continue the sales effort in the avoidant economy, people don't have a lot of time. They don't have a lot of bandwidth. They have a short attention span. So the whole idea of an elevator pitch is so old school. What do we need today? We need the express elevator pitch. We need something faster because people have very limited attention spans, limited time, limited resources, and they're probably running lean because the other lesson out of the Great Recession and in the avoidant economy that has followed is companies are not even having depth in their leadership teams like they used to. They're running lean at all levels. So you have to really maximize your opportunities, and brevity is going to be the key. So those elevator pitches of old, let's throw them out. I'm going to show you very quickly how to do a good express elevator pitch. Now, think of an elevator ride, and they used to say, you know, the elevator ride, you've got 30 to 60 seconds or whatever, and that's the time that you have to capture somebody's attention. Well, not any longer. The reality is you now have 9 seconds or less to capture and keep somebody's attention. So you have to plan for the express elevator. And let me tell you where the 9 seconds comes from. The 9 seconds comes from a study by the University of California. They first looked at what they called the incredible shrinking soundbite, and it had gone from 43 seconds in 1968 to a mere 9 seconds today. They especially looked at this where they looked at it first was with politicians. Now politicians, their sound bites were 40, 43 seconds in length, but they noticed that they had gone down that short, and what they realized, politics tends to imitate life. And what happens is they respond to what the listeners are doing, and they realize people weren't listening anymore. Well, this is a reflection across society. TV commercials, the most compelling part, 9 seconds. And the first 9 seconds of any commercial is very important. We're also a 9-second society because of Twitter. Time yourself reading a Twitter post, 9 seconds. Over and over again, we are reinforcing this 9-second attention span, so you and your elevator pitch have to be in line with this as well. So how do you shorten this up? Well, give you a couple ideas how to shorten it up. Look at the value you deliver. Focus on that. Notice it's not what you do, it's what you do for people. What's the result you get them? And what you do then is you craft that into a 9-second soundbite, and you test it and fine-tune it. One of my banking staffing clients, I just gave them one, and here's theirs, and they said I could give this out. We help banks reduce their payrolls by more than 30% while improving productivity more than 40%. Because that's what they do. I went in on my consulting assignment. I did a deep dive into what they do and how they do it because they told me they wanted to be more effective in their selling. So I looked at the results. I gave this to their sales team. They landed more appointments in a week's time using this than they had the previous 3 months. Because, I mean, what happens, think about it. Reduce payrolls by more than 30%, improve productivity 40% at the same time. That doesn't sound like staffing, and that's the point. So that's the first thing you have to do. Now, secondly, you've got to prepare for stops at every floor, because while it's the express elevator, it still may stop along the way. What is the equivalent of that? Well, you have to be ready when you say this for them to go, well, how do you do that? Well, what you say to that is, because, you know, when you have an intriguing statement like that, people are going to ask questions. So, you know, you could then just vomit information all over them, but that's not the point in consultative selling. And in the avoidant economy, where people have short attention spans, they're not going to pay attention. They will listen to everything they say themselves, but very little to what you have to say. So when somebody asks you, how do you do something, do the following. Say to them, tell me about 1 or 2 of your business challenges so I can relate specific things to your circumstances. So look at the beauty in that. They're now telling you things about themselves. And the beauty of that is, once they tell you about a couple of their business challenges, you just come back and say, well, the way I do that is I have several processes that are unique to us. And what those processes do, and then you just tell them another success story. Notice I don't go into a lot of what the process is. Process is boring, result is compelling. And so by getting them to tell me things, even if they said they're interested, I'm tying it back to everything that they've said. Now here's the beauty. You're in a face-to-face meeting probably where you give this express elevator pitch, although you could do it over the phone. Prompt them then for an appointment. And what you can say to them is, listen, you know, we're in an elevator. We can't talk very long, or if you were at a networking event, you could say, look, why don't I come by this Thursday or Friday? I'm available at 2 o'clock both days, and we could discuss this even further. Well, what are they going to say in most cases? Yes. They're going to say yes because they express curiosity. Why did they express curiosity? Because your express elevator pitch was compelling enough to want them to invest the time. I use this at all kinds of meetings. I go to networking events, and I'll be honest with you, I am not a big fan of cocktail parties. I hate fake. You know, at a cocktail reception, hi, how are you? Fine, how are you? Kill me now. Just kill me now. How about a real conversation? Well, the real conversation is one where when somebody asks me, what do I do? I'm short and pithy, have something compelling. You know, mine that I share with companies is I help companies develop nonstop growth and perpetual profits. The thing I almost always get asked immediately is, oh, really, how do you do that? And what do I always say? I say, well, you know, in a lot of ways, why don't you tell me about 1 or 2 challenges your company's having, and I can give you some specific examples. And guess what they always do? They tell me those things because they want to hear the story that's relevant to them. And sure enough, most of the time it leads to an appointment because people like to talk to themselves. I'm already proving I'm a good listener. Now, speaking of good listening, that's just going to be one of our differentiators. And authentic differentiation is something our industry doesn't do well. Part of the issue on this is we all sell the same product. None of us kidnaps people that I know, since that is illegal. It's a federal offense, and that's in the United States, and it's a criminal offense in every country that I know of that's listening here today. So We need to have different differentiation because we all have access to the same talent. Look, if you think your customer service is your differentiator, you are fooling yourself, because your competitors would be out of business and you would be the only one in business if you were that much better at it. No, your differentiator is going to be something different. And I'm going to give you some authentic differentiation things that you may or may not have thought of. And they're especially important in the avoidant economy because of the short attention spans, the overwhelm, the last-minute nature, and all of these cater to that. So first one, and most of you, I guarantee you, are guilty of this. Stop talking about your process. Stop talking about your methodology. They don't care. They don't care. They don't care how you get the result, as long as it's ethical, moral, and legal, and some of them probably don't even care about that. They don't care. They care about the result. Your methodology is boring, yet most of you like to talk about it because you're proud of it. You built it, especially if you're the owner, if you're the senior leadership team member of a large company. You're proud of it. I'm not trying to poo-poo that at all, okay? What I'm saying to you is that's not as compelling as the result. And here's how I know this. You pit two salespeople against one another. The salesperson that bores the client with methodology versus the one that compels them with the results they get for clients, that one that talks about results is going to get a better result. They're going to get the customer's interest. How do you do that? It's the next bullet point here, share parachute stories. You might be wondering, what are those? They're short, pithy stories to the point that talk about your successes. You drop those down into the midst of conversations. Also, as you're doing this, don't make it a monologue. Your job is to listen more than you talk. We all know that, but we don't do that. We often vomit information all over people because most of you were designed to talk. Your default factory programming from the womb, that was the factory, that tells you to talk. Engage in dialogue, especially what's interested to them. And what is that? Whatever they want to talk about. Ask them questions. Your job is to facilitate the conversation. The last thing then, always integrate your answers into additional questions. Notice I'm giving you very simple things. Simple is sustainable. That's why I'm giving them to you. But they're deeply impactful. Most salespeople aren't doing these things. Most salespeople, in that last one in particular, they're going in with a pre-planned list of questions, and they never vary from that, which is okay. But what's better is go through the pre-planned list of questions, but take their answers. Turn them into the next questions. That is a deep dive into who they are, what they need, what their company needs, the challenges they're having. But it also proves something. It proves you're listening. It proves that you care enough to really understand. And if there's one thing I know that all buyers want, they want to be understood. You may be the only person who's taking time to understand them that day or even in their life. You may be doing better than their spouse. You can't fix that. But what you can do is have a level of understanding they wish they had in the rest of their life. You want to talk about differentiation. If you're that one salesperson that's hanging on their every word, comment, and thought, and the other salesperson, people are just blathering on, guess who wins? You do, because you're authentically different. Now, in the avoidant economy, you must package perfectly. And David, I could call David in here, and David and Haley are all about great packaging. If you look at their website and the sophistication of it, if you look at the campaigns they generate, if you look at Haley Mail and how they create newsletters, it is about packaging. It's also about content. Packaging is key. And if you want to look at evidence in life, and I always look at this because we can learn from other industries, packaging is key. Go into any retail store. Look at the deliberate efforts that manufacturers go to with boxes and tins and colors and printing, because they know there's so much competition, there's so much noise out there, they have to stand out. I'm going to give you a model here today in the avoidant economy that you need to follow to make sure you're perfectly packaged. So this is a classic Venn diagram, and if you've not heard of Venn diagrams, it's just three intersecting circles that really make a point. The point I want to make here is I'm going to jump to number 4. The intersection of all three, meaning all three of these things are present, is what you're shooting for. You get complete buy-in when you have clear value, when you have compelling presentation, and brevity, and that's what most people are missing in this industry. So you have to have clear value. It has to be clear that it is valuable to the customer, that it's going to make an impact. If what you're presenting in a voicemail, in an email, on your website, or anywhere else, collateral materials, there has to be clear value. What is clear value? Your success stories is better than anything else. Most of you probably talk mostly about methodology. Not valuable, because it doesn't say, there's nothing in the methodology that proves you get a great result. Instead, what proves you get a great result is a great result. Go talk about your results. My website is full of all kinds of, my testimonials page is ridiculously long. That is on purpose, because other people are talking about the value. They're very specific about the money that we save them, the growth that we achieved. That's better than anything I could say about my methodology that's boring, that might get you a result. No. Let the other people tell the story, the result itself. Compelling presentations, how you package it, how you put it. It's in a good website, a solid newsletter, or it's delivered in a story in a compelling way, like that parachute story idea I was sharing earlier. And then brevity. You've got 9 seconds. You've got to keep that in mind. The first 9 seconds of what you say or what you write has to be the most compelling. So that's what you're shooting for. Now, look what happens. If you are missing, for example, so number 1 here, and I'll put my cursor on this, you have clear value, and you have brevity, but you have no compelling presentation, you're not going to get any interest. And I want you to have this as a diagnostic. If you find that you have no interest, people aren't interested in your message, it's most likely you're missing the compelling presentation. Now, number 2, if you've got clear value and a compelling presentation, but you're not being brief, you have no attention. So if your website's not getting attention, your messages aren't getting called back, most likely it's a brevity issue. Or let's say you have the, you look at this and you go, well, people are telling us there's not enough value to pay our price. That means that, number 3, you've got brevity, you've got compelling value or compelling presentation, but there's no clear value. Now you know what you need to address. Go use this as a diagnostic. Do an audit. Have other people look at it. Ask them about your value. Ask about your presentation. Ask about your brevity. Do an analysis. This Venn diagram will tell you the missing component of perfect packaging. And in the avoidant economy, you have to be packaged well. There's going to be an influx of staffing companies unlike anything we've ever seen. And I'm seeing this right now. I'm getting an average of a call a week from people asking for consulting and coaching help to set up a new staffing company. Some of them are serious, some of them are fly-by-night. But that's, this is just amazing. An average of 1 a week, sometimes it's more. You're going to have a lot of competition, so you've got to make sure you stand out. And a lot of that's going to be in your packaging. Now, when you sell in the avoidant economy, you have to sell right. You've got to sell to the people you're listening to. And as an industry, we've not been doing that very well. But you have to do it better in the avoidant economy. Well, why is that? Well, that's because people like to buy in certain ways. And because they have a short attention span, because they don't have a lot of time, and because there's lots of competing noise, you have to really cater to them. What's the best way to do that? Give them exactly what they want. What people want is to be sold to in their social style or in a way that fits their social style. Now, if you're not familiar with social styles, this is the TRACOM model, T-R-A-C-O-M. And I use this model because the 4 social styles that they describe, it's very, very well done. And you don't have to engage in personality testing to understand these. The words alone point out what it is. So drivers, for example, they want what they want when they want it. It's all about a result. They'll run through a wall to get it. The expressive social style, these are the people with the gift of gab. These are the natural salespeople in the world, although they're not the best salespeople because they gab too much. Amiables, it's all about the relationship. Analytics, all they care about are the facts, figures, and data. Every one of your buyers has one of these 4 as their primary social style. So if you just start getting good at this, and this is what you do with your sales team, is you make sure you mandate that they use these, that they're looking for the drivers, the people who are quick to the point, they make quick decisions, or the expressives, the talkers, or the amiables who want to spend 5 to 10 minutes with you getting to know you, or the analytics who are always asking for information and data. These people are easy to spot. if you start assessing in the first few minutes of a phone conversation or in a face-to-face meeting who they are, all you got to do is use the point system. I say earn points because you do the following. With drivers, if you want to sell to their style, get to the point. Don't talk a lot. You shouldn't be doing that anyway, but you need to be even more brief. Get to the point because they will value and cherish that. Expressives, let them make their point. Go ahead and let them talk it through because that's what they want to do. And the salesperson, people who do that, they will do better. Amiables, you get points for the relationship. The moment you notice somebody's an amiable, talk about the pictures on their wall. The amiables you're talking to on the phone, always ask them how their daughter did at the ballet recital you heard about last time. Good to do with all of them, but I'll tell you what, you do that with the driver, you better do it fast because they're not going to want to take a lot of time. Amiables, they'll take 5 minutes and talk about this, and it's a great relationship builder. And the analytics, the point one there is point to the tangible, measurable value. If they have to ask you a lot of questions about what that is, they're going to be very dissatisfied. But if you come armed and equipped to sell to them in that way, they will love you. Now, are you going to be brilliant at assessing social styles the first time you do this? No, but I'll tell you something. I've been teaching this for a long time now, and it's very quick. The moment you start spotting this, in fact, do it in your social life too. Start figuring out who people are. Just don't tell them what you're doing. You get very good at this very quickly. Okay, I'm hoping that all of you do order reviews because not all orders were created equal. And you might have a gold, silver, bronze system or ABC or 1, 2, 3. Well, that was good prior to the Great Recession, but it's not great in the avoidant economy. And the reason why is you need something a little more comprehensive. And let me show you what that is. It's actually 4 words: abilities, benefits, communication, and dilemma. If you're going to prioritize filling orders, I'll give you an example of this. Just started a project with a national healthcare company. They have over 1,000 orders and a staff of a little over 30. That's not uncommon in healthcare. And part of the problem in this work that I was started doing with them, we've had immediate impact because they're actually filling things more quickly, they're adding people very quickly, and they're improving gross margins. And the reason why is they are using this system to know what is most important. So here's how you do it. Every order that comes in, and actually this should be assessed by the recruiting team, not by the sales team, because the sales team is biased if they took the order. Many salespeople have never met an order they didn't like. So abilities, what are the abilities that the company's looking for, the buyers are looking for? And you have to ask yourself the question, how readily available are those abilities, those skills or experiences? That will affect your prioritization. The harder it is to find, the more down the list you may want to put it. Benefits. What are the benefits to the employee, the benefits to you, and the benefits to the company? It has to be a 3-way equality here. There have to be benefits for people wanting to take this job. And I'm not talking benefits like healthcare, but all the things they're going to get out of it, the work experience, the pay, has to be beneficial for somebody who wants to take this job. It has to be beneficial to you. Look, if they want to pay you little and demand a lot, this is not beneficial. It should go way down your prioritization list. Communication. Some of you are missing this. You have to have guarantees of communication up front. I don't know about all of you, but it drives me crazy when you take an order, you start submitting candidates, and it seems as though the client has disappeared into the witness protection program. The only thing that makes sense to me, they would give us an order and then they stop responding. They must be somewhere with the U.S. Marshals. So communication has to be agreed to up front, how you're going to communicate, and you have to have assurances in the avoidant economy that they're going to be responsive. Otherwise, it's a waste of your time. The D is also missing for a lot of people. What is the customer's dilemma? If there isn't a dilemma that they're trying to solve, they're not going to have a lot of motivation to fill it quickly. The bigger the dilemma, the faster it will close. So that's all you got to do. Look at all 4 of those. If you do that, your recruiting team prioritizes those that have the best of the ABC. Those will fill faster. You'll do more deals. You'll do them more quickly. You'll be able to get more out of the bandwidth of your recruiters, and you'll grow your business very, very quickly. Now, last couple things here, and then we'll move into some Q&A. talent deficiency is going to be the rule of thumb. We've already talked about a little bit ago the great talent recession. That is the new reality, and it's going to last quite a long time. While our colleges and universities are working at this, while the federal government has talked about some job training partnerships and retraining, none of that is going to catch up quickly. Visas are not going to make up the shortfalls, and this is going to be an issue for a long time. Even you are going to have trouble finding talent. I want to give you a way to mobilize your team and additional resources. And these are best practices that have been used prior to the avoidant economy, but we're finding that our clients are using them even more. Let me tell you how this works is, let's assume that you have a talent deficiency. You don't have enough talent to fill all your orders, and that's true of many companies. Notice what I've done here is I'm telling you don't mess with your dedicated resources. Too many companies are making that mistake. They have multiple divisions and they're moving people around. They're cannibalizing from their own business. Be very, very careful on this. This is especially true of medium to large size companies. However, those of you in smaller companies, and I put smaller companies in this instance under $20 million, you have to be very careful with those dedicated resources too, because people build momentum in this industry. And every minute they spend doing something different, a different kind of staffing, a different kind of fulfillment, they're losing all that momentum, and it's just time spent on something else versus their core. So treat your dedicated resources as sacred as possible and use these other areas to make sure that you fill deficiencies. And the first one is you can give extra credit assignments. People, and in fact I was talking with somebody yesterday, I came up with a new idea of, we talk about carrots and sticks. You know, you motivate people with a carrot or you motivate them with a stick, the positive versus the negative. As we were talking, I thought, well, how about hugs and kicks? You know, motivate people with a hug or the equivalent of a mental hug, or a kick them into gear. I don't know about you, I'd rather hug them than kick them. Well, what's a way to hug? Give them extra credit assignments. Say to people, I'm not going to take you out of your dedicated role, but what I will do is when you complete the things you're supposed to, you complete your core areas, you can have some extra credit assignments. This is working very, very well in two clients of mine in particular, a client that's about a $16 million company right now, and they have two divisions. People that can do extra credit work in the other division once they've completed all their work. Guess what? Half the staff is doing so. One of my $500 million clients is doing this as well. They just rolled this out in some of their branches, and they have multiple lines of business they do, from accounting, finance to IT and others. They're allowing people to cross industries and do extra credit work when they're meeting or exceeding their expectations. It's amazing how well this does, because the real go-getters will want to do it. Another thing for talent deficiency is start courting some trusted allies. Those would be other staffing firms that are non-competing or competitors you can trust. Where do you find those? Go to your state associations or national associations. A shared acquisition center. This is an interesting one. A shared services center is a model that's common to bigger staffing companies, but a shared acquisition center is actually common for all kinds of companies now. We're rolling this out in companies where if you have multiple offices or locations, from a recruitment standpoint, there can be one centralized recruiting location that's either doing sourcing or sourcing and recruiting, or sourcing, recruiting, and even some onboarding, so you may want to consider that. One of my favorite ideas, I came up with this name called Mobilize Moms. And look, there's an amazing, it's not just moms, but a lot of them are moms. There are an amazing group of workers out there who have had to leave the traditional workforce. And that's because they have a kid at home or they have some kind of special circumstance going on. Mobilize Moms is mobilizing a workforce who works probably a couple hours a day to maybe a half day at most, and you're mobilizing them through technology to do recruitment for you. This is not a new idea, but it's something we really need to kind of blow out and expand, because there's going to be such a deficit in talent. Often these men or women, in this case, they could be mobilized dads, are doing a lot of sourcing, but they can do all kind of aspects. If you think of an RPO model and how RPO, recruitment process outsourcing, kind of takes either all or part of the recruiting process from a corporation, you can do that for yourselves as well. These mobilized moms, they could just be doing the reference checking. They could be doing the full process. They could be doing part of it. The point is you can get people for a very reasonable investment because they get to stay at home and do what they need to do but dedicate some time to you. The only key you have to do with the mobilized moms concept is have very, very clear accountabilities and expectations. And when you do, this is highly, highly successful. One of my clients does national work. It's a single location. They do national work. They rolled out the mobilized mom concept last year. Interestingly enough, they dropped the job boards. Not something I'm a fan of, but they actually dropped the job boards. I think that's a mistake, but they were able to do it because the job boards can still supplement, but they found they didn't need it. They were getting so many referrals. These mobilized moms were reactivating their database. It actually lowered their recruitment costs versus raising it, even though they employed about 6 of these people because they were so beneficial to them. All right, so we've come to number 10 idea, and that is achieving full sales efficacy. I'm going to let you read this detail because you now know how to use a Venn diagram if you haven't before. The thing that you have to remember is, number 1 means that accountability and methodology are present, but hiring profile is missing. I'd like you to do this. This is your homework assignment for coming today. And that is, go look at your sales organization. Is it efficient? Is it going to get you where you want to go? You need to look at that right now because if you don't have these 3 components, and if they're not all working in concert, your sales effort is going to limp, it's not going to succeed, or it's going to fail. And so let me just take one example here. Is if you have solid accountability, I mean solid, people are unwaveringly held to a standard, and you have a very good methodology, but you don't have a good hiring profile, you'll have a solid sales system, I guarantee you, but you're not going to have the people to drive the business. Because the people you hire, they're not going to fit right because you don't have a good hiring profile to identify them. You want to look at these 3 areas. Do you have solid accountability, unwavering? Do you have a hiring profile that makes it crystal clear who you bring in and you have great success? More people succeed than fail in the system. And I'm talking 75 to 80% of the time or higher, people work out because you hired right. And do you have a solid methodology? Yes, I don't want you to promote that, but I want you to have that. You need to have all 3 of those things. Look at this, and this is something I help companies with all the time. So if you need additional help beyond this, reach out to me. But look at your sales organization. Why? Well, I guess you don't need to do this if you're happy with the low-hanging fruit. But if you want something better than low-hanging fruit, you have to have all 3 of these things because it's those organizations that are boosting their gross margins 3% more or higher. They're bringing in business. They're creating business. They're doing better than everybody else. Now, in just a moment, I'm going to ask David to share any questions, but I want to give you some additional resources. I love our industry, so I make it a point to give a ton of stuff away. It's one of the reasons I partner with Haley. They do an outstanding job with Lunch with Haley and all kinds of resources on their site, and we have that too. Go to my blog. This is a screenshot of the homepage. I am an active blogger 5 days a week, 4 depending, what's going on that week. Every week I'm putting out a couple more podcasts, a couple videos. I write proficiently, and what you're going to want to do is go out there. All of it's free. There are hundreds of videos and podcasts and posts. You want to come back to the site often because we're always adding to it. There's a link up here, this picture, The Avoidant Economy. That's how you access that introduction and free chapter of the book. Here's a little bit more on that. If you like what you heard about the Avoidant Economy, if you want to go into a deep dive on really how to get into this, I've actually put out a special offer for all of you today for coming. Right now, I think this is $89 if I remember correctly. We're offering a 20% discount when you buy this Friday. So whatever that ends up being, it's very reasonable. It's lifetime access to it. All of them are videos. None of the videos is more than like 5 or 6 minutes, so you can watch them in short bursts and go implement. And it's me having a conversation with you about this. This is the code you use when you sign up. It expires on midnight on Friday. Also, I do classes as well. And we take, I love the word deep dive, we take some deep dives into some very specific topics. Here are the sessions, just 5 of them that are coming up. Spontaneous buying, I can't wait to talk about that. I believe that's March. And it's really about how you get people to be spontaneous buyers, to buy very quickly versus drag it out. Right now, we're offering a $100 discount just for these listeners. We're offering you $50 extra off. In honor of today's session, we put the code as lunch12. Again, that expires midnight on Friday. The website to get to all of this, wintripconsultinggroup.com. David, I'm going to turn it over to you to see if there are any questions I can answer for our group today.
Great, thanks, Scott, and for terrific information. Thank you so much for sharing. We have had quite a few questions come in, so I'm going to provide them to you in the order that they came in, and that may not necessarily be the order of ease for you, because I'm going to start with a really tough one. The first question that came in right at the beginning was a question about Obamacare and your opinions as to how it's going to affect staffing companies, and then the easy part is how it's going to affect insurance costs. The answer is that's going up a lot. So how else do you see it affecting the industry?
Well, I think it's one of the best things that could have happened to our industry. Here's my belief and my thought. I don't care that it increased costs, because you know what? I believe we can just go make more money. Where do we make more money? Well, if our costs go up, so do our customers. So you know what? Let's present a solution that solves that for them. So this is a great opportunity. Let's focus on the controllable. Our costs may go up. Let's go out. Let's sell more value. Let's increase our margins. That'll pay for it. We'll have more business. And how can we do that? It's the avoidant economy. So I'm not concerned. In fact, in some ways, I'm thrilled simply because this makes the avoidant economy even that much more pronounced, and it's that much better for us.
Great, thank you. And a couple of people asked questions about when you were discussing the not disclosing bill rates and lifting up the kimono. And one question that came in was, how do we give them a bill rate when we don't know what they'd like to pay?
Guess what? I don't give a crap what they want to pay. I mean,
Thought that might be the answer.
Well, look, I mean, and this is what I need to say to all of you. You need to stop letting your customers set your prices. I mean, look, does your attorney let you set his hourly rate? Does the grocery store let you pay what you want? No. You know, I never believed in this. I set a rate, and I charged it, and I went for it. And my job was to prove that I was valuable enough. And those of you who think, well, I'll never be able to do that, you'll be right. So good luck with your commoditized pricing that falls in with everybody else. For the rest of you that are really willing to do this, make sure you're selling your value. Make sure you differentiate the way I said. And if you do that, rate doesn't matter. In fact, if it does matter, what happens in these cases is they may talk about, well, gee, you're a lot more expensive than anybody else out there, but then they continue to talk to you. Why is that? Because you're differentiating yourself. You're providing value versus price. The best way to go about this, if you're unsure, is just start to experiment. Just start to experiment by introducing a bill rate, talking about that, and base it on what you believe is a healthy and fair gross margin. Do that. You're not gouging anybody. You're being taken care of. They're being taken care of, and everybody wins.
Okay, that's great. Another question, is an interesting one, is on the executive recruiting or direct hire side. When the conversation goes to pricing issues, everybody's in the habit of saying, well, it's X% of sales, somewhere between 10 on the very low end and 35 on the high end. What do you recommend for recruiters in terms of quoting fees?
Well, that's fine. You just, and I'm a big fan of tiered pricing for executive search consultants. So your fee may start out at 25%, and that's for your basic services. 30% fee gets them even more value that enhances the service, and 35% gives them the ultimate value. Interestingly enough, people who do that and they pack in the value the customers they need, they report that people buy at the 30 to 35% or the option 2 and 3 levels 80+% of the time.
Okay, and I assume you're going to say, if you're in the recruiting business, of course you're disclosing how you charge for your services, so the fee is upfront.
Yeah, I mean, the percentage there doesn't matter as much as long as you're providing the requisite value. That's very, very different than markup. And you bring up a good point here, David. The key that we have to make sure we do is you have to make it crystal clear what's in it for them. And look, here's the other thing for those who do search. You basically work for free if you think about it. Unless you're doing retained, and that's less than 1% of the industry, you work for free until you produce. So you're basically taking all of the onus on yourself. You prove you're worth it. So they get to use you for free until you prove you're worth it. I think that's a pretty good deal. I know of very few industries that don't collect a retainer. And the contingent, 99% of our business, that's what we do. So they have no risk.
Excellent. Another question that came in was about having the role of a branch manager versus a sales manager, and should you have a separate sales manager, or should the branch manager be in both roles?
Well, that's my response is I do not know the answer because I don't know who you are and I don't know how big you are. I'll say it this way. The smaller you are, the more combined the role has to be. The bigger you get, the less combined the role has to be. One of the assignments I'm on right now is we just took one of the leaders out of a production role because it was holding back the growth. Every company hits that glass ceiling. The best way I can say this right now is if it's a combined role, then you do that as long as you can get away with it, and then eventually you're going to have to split that out because it just gets too big after a while. What is that? It's different for every other company. That's where I would have to dig into your operation and your P&L. But what I would say is if you're small right now and that's working for you, it's fine. But if you're getting bigger and you have a sales team that's more than a couple people or a recruiting team that's more than a couple people, it's time to start taking a real close look at that one.
Okay, good. Couple last questions, Scott, before we wrap it up. And there's going to be a few that we're probably not going to have time to get to, but I want to get to a couple of these. One person said, I work for a very small staffing agency. What advice do you have for someone who's trying to grow on a very limited budget?
Wow, that's a very broad question as well. Follow my advice today. Look, if you have a limited budget, the one thing that you have is your time. And the more customers you talk to, the more you talk about the value, the more that you understand them, the more you create the yet. That doesn't matter. I mean, you're probably not monitoring the number of phone calls you make because it's costing you money, or your long distance bills. Maybe you're doing a local market, maybe not, but none of that's expensive. Go create tremendous value. Go hear these customers and their needs. This business, I had somebody say to me at one point in time, this is a really simple business. All you need is a phone and business cards and you're good to go. Not really. But in some ways it's true. If you have the natural abilities to do this, all you really need is a phone, some business cards when you're in front of people, and you need to have really good conversations. So budget doesn't matter when it comes to those kind of things.
Okay, and the last question, and it's actually one that just came in, but it's a perfect wrap-up. And the comment was, Scott, great information, but why is the avoidant economy the greatest opportunity in 3 decades?
Oh, well, that's easy. I mean, look, this is bigger than low-hanging fruit. Our industry, it is a great one to wrap up on. Our industry has grown because of a lot of low-hanging fruit, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we had so many people coming to us, and they were handing us orders. Well, they've gotten smart over the years. Now they pit us against one another. They beat us up on rate. They beat us up on fee. The avoidant economy is the greatest opportunity because it won't be just about volume. It'll be about value, the value you provide, and the volume of dollars that you're going to get back in regards to that as well. This is why we're seeing margins, why we're seeing bill rates, and we're seeing fees climb. Is companies like all of you are starting to take a stand for the value that you provide. So while the game for a long time was all about the volume, sheer volume of business, we have an opportunity now because of the business problems that companies have to provide such a valuable service that we can actually charge more. And think about that, and that's my challenge to all of you. Imagine a business like this, a business where you have tons of business, but it's actually less maybe than you had in the past, but your profits are higher than they were in the past. That's low labor intensity. That's higher margins, and that's a better life because you're not working 60-hour weeks. That's what's available in the avoidant economy because you can make more money because you're seen as more valuable, because you're highly consultative, you're creating the yes, and you're no longer this commoditized firm that has to kill itself for a pittance from these people who want to pay you a low rate and have high demands. The avoidant economy is about meeting these customers. I mean, if you think about it, they either want flexibility in contract or temp staffing, and they want some assurances if they're going to hire people full-time. That's all of you. They are not going to get that through their own efforts. That is why the avoidant economy is huge. And it is. Next year, if all of you play your cards right, I can promise you this because I have some of my clients thankful for the Great Recession. Who would have thunk it? Well, it is there because they're leveraging the outcome, and that's called the avoidant economy.
Great. Well, Scott, thank you very much for the time today. For those of you whose questions we didn't get to, I apologize, but we're already over past 3 o'clock Eastern. Scott, you are welcome to contact Scott. His information is up on the screen now. And I will also, Scott, I'll get to you the list of the questions for everybody, so if there's people that you need to follow it up with, you can do that as well. I also want to invite everyone to to, this is our last Lunch with Haley before the holiday break, so I want to wish everyone very Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and whatever holidays you celebrate. Have a wonderful rest of 2012, and we hope to see you next month on our January Lunch with Haley. Actually, we're going to be doing 2 to kick the year off, and the next one's going to be on content marketing, which actually ties in really well to the avoidant economy. We're going to be talking about the art of selling without selling and how you educate people to better understand when, where, why, and how to use staffing services. So from all of us at Haley Marketing Group, thank you very much, Scott, and for everybody else, we look forward to seeing you on the next Lunch with Haley.